Hello, I'm Richard Toye. I'm the author of The Roar of the Lion, The Untold Story of Churchill's World War II Speeches. And a question which a lot of people ask is, did Churchill write his own speeches? And the basic answer is, yes, he did. Certainly the famous phrases which he associated were his own. He didn't generally employ ghostwriters. He would occasionally solicit paragraphs from civil servants. People would contribute ideas. But fundamentally, he can be considered the author. But that actually disguises a more complex reality, that there was a bureaucratic process which lay behind the writing and the delivery of the speeches. So, although Churchill would spend many, many hours to write a speech, he would send out the results, his first draft, once it was typed out, he would send it out to government departments, and they would look at the relevant sections that they knew about. They would send comments back. They would say, we don't think you should say this, or we do think you should say that. They would often chip in with their own suggestions. People would be writing in saying, we think you ought to say something nice about the police because you haven't said something nice about them for a while, or we think you should do a speech to pep up the morale of the Home Guard, whose morale seems to be sagging, and so on. And Churchill would get these comments and he would respond to them. Now, often he would sort of respond in a rather hostile way and say, why are these fools saying this? But in fact, he actually would frequently take the criticism on board if it was well-founded. And so the popular image of him as somebody who just charged ahead regardless of what other people thought, who was completely bullheaded, totally stubborn. There was actually something more complicated going on, that you would never describe Churchill exactly as a collegial figure, but he was somebody who was able to accept constructive criticism, albeit often with a lot of fuss and complaint before he actually did so. And so I think the message here is that Churchill's speeches were actually strengthened by this process of criticism. It stopped him making mistakes. He did make some mistakes, of course, during his speech making during the war, but perhaps rather fewer than you might expect. So I think what the process of his speech writing tells us is that we should actually regard him as a leader who, although he's predominantly thought of as a very sort of single-minded figure, and certainly he was in some respects, there was actually an ability to react, respond, and listen to reason.